Yes. Welcome. Great to see this chamber so full of vibrant and smiling faces. I'm Charlie Zali, and Chair of the Metropolitan Council, and this is the Metropolitan Council Committee of the Whole meeting, March 20th, 2024. And we are going to hear a number of presentations and maybe more formal presentations than what we were experiencing.
I'm watching you online, Charlie.
Oh, good. How am I doing online? Building on the presentations that we saw out in the lobbies, which was great. It was great to meet many of you, and thank you for being here this afternoon. That is the agenda, so unless anybody has any disagreement, I will take that as approval. And we do need to review the minutes from the last Metropolitan Council Committee of the Whole on February 21st, 2024. And they were sent out in advance. So if there's any corrections, additions, questions.
Move approval.
Thank you. Thank you. Second, motion second approval. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Well, here we are to the main presentation, and we're going to hear a series of work. And is it Emma Dvorak who's going to take us through this? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Emma Dvorak. I am a senior planner and sector rep with Local Planning Assistance. I'm very excited for you to hear what these community members have prepared for you tonight. So to start, I'd like to introduce you to Magali Ruiz Barrios. Magali is an intern at the Met Council who is studying sociology of law and communication at the University of Minnesota. Magali is going to talk about the history and importance of this engagement process. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. As Emma stated, my name is Magali Ruiz, and I'm excited to present today on the Regional Development Guide Community Leader Collaboration. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize the leaders from the different organizations that have been working along with us on this project, and they'll also be presenting shortly. So I'll begin today by recapping last year's Young Leaders Collaboration, then I'll jump into this year's collaboration, and you'll hear an overview of our project goals, and our community-centered design. And I'll end it with our conclusion. So last year, our team led the Young Leaders Collaboration, which we worked with 5 organizations and nearly 50 young leaders. As you may recall, the young leaders shared their findings and recommendations with Met Council staff and council members on May 17th of last year. Since then, we have used the young leaders' insights and recommendations and qualitative data in a variety of ways. After the workshop, we created and distributed memos and presented findings with specific policy areas. Findings were presented to the Transportation, Land Use, and Regional Parks Policy Plan staff. We also created a framework around housing affordability that has been incorporated into the anti-displacement work that LCA is currently leading. In addition, we have a plethora of qualitative data, which includes direct quotes that have been sorted and coded and are easily accessible by council staff. And then lastly, we learned that community members really value the opportunity to be here and speak and present directly to staff and council members. The YLC dedicated time to reflect on our process and strengths and identified growth areas to improve the future and ongoing engagement with the council. So due to the success with the Young Leaders Collaboration, the workshop style of engagement continued, but this time with 3 different groups and over 30 participants. For this round of engagement, we did not create any age parameters, meaning we wanted organizations to recruit all ages. Something else to note is that we are compensating the organizations and participants for their time and expertise. In October, we started engagement with 3 groups that were also members from Shakopee Diversity Alliance that joined Community Resource Center, And then representatives from Community Resource Center will further explain during their presentation. So MI CASA focuses their outreach to rural areas and small towns and presents opportunity to engage with demographic segments that may have been underserved in the past. And then this group recruited Shakopee Latino youth. Community Resource Center's mission is to spark hope and promote social justice and overcome poverty so that children and families who are in need of support can live with dignity and security. This group is predominantly East African and is the only group that recruited participants with a wide age range from high school age youth to older adults. And then this group is also located in Shakopee. And finally, we have COPAL. COPAL's mission is to lead social impact initiatives to improve the quality of life for Latin American families. COPAL envisions a prosperous and inclusive Minnesota that is accessible and enjoyable for everyone. COPAL's participants include first and second generation Latin American youth. So moving into our project goals, before I delve into our project, I just wanted to share some of our project goals. So throughout this workshop engagement, we wanted to create and establish meaningful connection with underrepresented groups and individuals. We wanted to foster capacity for civic engagement and policy work for the participants. And we are committed to the accountability and to widely share participant ideas and expertise. And finally, we wanted to embed equity into the regional development process by uplifting participant voices, insights, and expertise of the region as they pertain to the Met Council. So moving into the timeline of our project, our workshops began in October of 2023. There were four core components that we built into our project for all 6 workshops. We wanted to make sure that we could build the participants' capacity and understanding of the Met Council and the 2050 regional development process, while also helping them understand our policy areas and how those connect to their lives and community. Every workshop included some aspect of statistics and story element. We shared data with participants, learned about how participants experience the region today through a variety of methods, and had the participants carry out their own interviews and data analysis of findings. Across each workshop, we had a series of activities to begin, identifying the priorities and focus areas. We started off very broadly and widely, but as they gained a deeper understanding of the Council and the regional development process and learned to utilize qualitative data and research methods, we began to slowly focus on identifying their priorities to be presented to the Met Council staff and Council members. As a collaboration, we did not want to make this a traditional form of engagement. So we wanted to ensure that the participants also developed skills and worked on growth areas that they identified at the beginning of our workshop engagement. Through this, we have been able to build trust and connection within the groups. So moving into our community-centered workshop design, in our story sessions, we delve into data points on topics that participants were interested in. For example, the percentage of people who rely on public transit as their main form of transportation. We encourage participants to find connections from their own lives in the data and to share those stories, giving more life and meaning to the data. Participants conducted 3 interviews with peers and community members, focusing on topics they have identified as priority concerns within their communities. Participants developed interview questions in partnership with us, with Metropolitan Council staff, to ensure that the questions are open-ended and foster comprehensive answers. After conducting and recording interviews, participants and Met Council staff analyzed the data together and identified overarching themes and potential solutions to address community needs. And lastly, at all workshops and during discussions with participants, Met Council staff made sure to take detailed notes, which also served as another source of qualitative data. So that is an overview of the philosophy behind this project and an overview of our engagement process. We hope that the Met Council will continue to recognize the value of community experience, knowledge, and expertise. Next, you will hear from the representatives from all three groups, starting with MI CASA, then Community Resource Center, COPAL, and concluding with my colleague Jillian Greenberg, who will present on the next steps of our project. And then each presenter will be given 10 minutes for their portion of Q&A. So we urge council members to be mindful of this time. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to any of our team. I mean, anyone from our team or, yeah. So I'll pass it over to MI CASA. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the overview and the time limits. We're going to be mindful.
I'll be the timekeeper this year.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. Hello, my name is Elisua Castañeda Martinez, and I will present about affordable housing and transportation in Shakopee and Chaska with my partners Stephanie Galvan Ortiz and David Guzman Arias. Who we are. MI CASA is an organization in Shakopee that provides food distribution, cultural navigation, and youth development programs as part of its goal to creating a welcoming and inclusive community. The two topics that we are going to discuss today are transportation options and connected communities, as well as affordable housing that meets the community's needs. In the duration of 5 months, we did 7 workshops. During these workshops, we discussed the 8 land use objectives and became interested in researching ways to maximize opportunities for growth in places well served by transit, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure. We were also interested in people in all types of communities having housing opportunities that align with their needs. I would now like to introduce my teammate, Stephanie, who is going to talk about transportation and community spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is Stephanie Galvan Ortiz, and I will be talking about transportation options and connected communities. So the first issue is limited public transportation options in the spread out area of Shakopee and Chaska communities. Many residents rely on personal vehicles as their primary mode of transportation. Our research shows that people are often unaware of public transportation options or how to use the transit system. Year-round walking and biking are less realistic due to the cold winters in the Shakopee and Chaska areas. The people who are most affected are those who do not drive. Many of us use cars to get everywhere, but that can be expensive and not everyone can afford it. We also have a lack of community spaces that are free and inexpensive where residents can gather, especially teens. Interviewees mentioned that they like community centers and parks, but they want more spaces like community gardens, a sports dome, and entertainment options that are free or inexpensive. So the first quote we have about transportation was given in Spanish, but I'll read the English version of it. It says, "The public transportation is a catalyst for job creation. It is a link to jobs and opportunities for people from large and small communities. Having access to public transportation could give us more job opportunities. This shows that there is a benefit to having more public transportation to access more jobs with better pay and higher quality housing." The second quote says, "I would like to be able to go to the university. I think that it is huge, especially for students. I want to go back to school, but one thing that stops me is the commute time. The universities are in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and there aren't buses that go straight there. And with a car, the commute time can take forever, especially in the winter. Lack of public transportation can impede access to continuing education post-high school, which can have lifelong consequences." Our community identified a need for accessible community spaces, such as sports centers and places to connect with nature. One quote says, "An indoor sports field would be beneficial because you can use it for the winter, so every sport can use it. Soccer, football, lacrosse. Community connections are important for both physical and mental health." The recommendations that we have for the Met Council is to increase transit routes and stops in the Shakopee and Chaska area, with a focus on stops at community locations like schools and community centers, as well as routes from Shakopee and Chaska to Minneapolis. Another recommendation is to create programs to teach students about public transit while they are in school or in driver's ed to normalize using public transit. Our recommendations for connected communities is for the Met Council to encourage communities to develop connected neighborhoods that allow for access to free or low-cost entertainment and activity centers. Now, my team member David will talk about the importance of affordable housing in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. My name is David Guzman Arias. and I will be talking about the lack of affordable housing that meets our community needs. Some of our interviewees shared their opinions about how the wages for jobs in the Shakopee and Chaska area do not allow residents to afford the cost of housing. The lack of affordable housing options for larger families forces families to live in homes that are often too small for the number of people living there. Our community members also said that the wages in the area do not match the cost of housing. During our research, we heard the following stories. I live with just my mom. They are paying her the same even though they are rising, the rent and utilities are going up. Many find it challenging to pay for their single-family home or apartment because their pay does not match the price of housing. We have been wanting to move for the last few years, but we want to stay in the Shakopee area because this is where our friends and community are. But it is still hard because housing prices are going up. People want to stay in the community where they have family and friends, but they find it difficult when houses aren't affordable. For the recommendations for this section of housing, we think that the Met Council should pursue regional policies that encourage suburban areas like the Scott County to build more affordable housing and a variety of affordable housing types for families of all sizes. They should also explore ways to provide more education on the housing market and affordable housing, starting in high school, so people have a better understanding of their options and challenges. Last slide, please. During this process, we have learned about the Met Council and regional planning. We have developed skills such as public speaking, critical thinking, and how we may have an impact on bringing awareness to our community's concerns. Thank you, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we do have questions. Wonderful presentation. Anybody? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because Shakopee is so well represented in the House tonight, I'm just going to commend everybody. You guys are fantastic. Mary Hernandez, who's back there, if you wave, is one of the founders of MI CASA, and is fantastic. And it's just so nice to see you guys here and presenting on these things. She and I have been texting as we're doing, going, yep, we should come out and talk about this. We can go out and present some information on that. So I just want to say just what a great thing you guys are doing here. And I love that you came and are presenting this to my fellow council members to see what Shakopee looks like. And so to be very representative and to be such a strong voice for your community. I appreciate it, what you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Well done. Really appreciate all of this insight and the recommendations that you're making. And I just want to also just highlight a point you're making. And I've learned this now from Councilmember Dvorak, the phrase that I will reference is a just economy. And I think it is so important. And while we don't control, wages, I think there is definitely a big piece of this that the private sector and public sector as employers have to step up and pay livable wages. And so I just want to make sure that we keep thinking about a just economy for all, because while government can do a lot, and we have a lot to do around affordable housing, we have to make sure that people have opportunity through their ability to advance their goals and their dreams and their careers and their well-being, and living wages and beyond living wages as part of that. So I really appreciate that as part of your presentation tonight, and I will take everything that you're bringing forward very seriously in our work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. And just a couple of sort of overarching comments, and I do have a specific question for the team here, but congratulations. This is great work. I'm sure we're going to see more great work. I was thrilled to see the work of the community leaders collaboration last year, and I can tell, now that there's a year under your belt here, this is really tightening up. I just want to assure everyone that's here, this influences and gets incorporated into our policy making. And right now, as we're looking at establishing our regional design guidelines out to the year 2050, and that's what we're charged with, is kind of that forward thinking. What you've done here will be incorporated and inform the policies that we make. So thank you for doing that. And then I really appreciate it, David, you're presenting the reflections, and I see that list, and it just makes me thinking, we were speaking just briefly, John and I, about we could use some of this education here, but I think, I kind of came to policymaking late in life. I always sort of had interest in it, but it wasn't until I was elected to the Minneapolis City Council in the year 2000 that I really became a professional policymaker. And I just think if I had been exposed to sort of what you reflected on here, how that might have impacted my life and my journey differently. So I applaud you all for engaging at this level, and I can't wait to see where this takes you in your lives and careers. But I have one specific question, and I don't know if this is for you, Alicia, or is it Alicia or any member of the team, but and I noticed on a lot of the presentations, many of you conducted dozens of interviews. I'm just wondering how you identified your interview subjects, the people that you interviewed. Where did you find them? How did you decide to interview those people?
Thank you, council member. We decided to interview people in the Chaska and Shakopee area in ages 14 through 24 because we felt that they're the people in need of transportation the most, and they're usually the ones going out, whether you're a teen to getting a job, you're a teen, you need way to get to school, way to hang out with friends. So kind of that age is more of like the time where you're buying a car, when you're needing all of that sort of transportation stuff.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Any other? Oh, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Once again, thank you so much for all of the insights that you have been able to glean and share for the work that you did. Kudos and thank you. I also wanted to ask, in both presentations, you talked about the need for education. K through 12 education has many, many objectives, and of course there are many discussions about what should be taught, when and how. Did you all have any feedback that you gleaned from your interviews and discussions as to when it would be most appropriate for education about transit and/or housing?
For public transportation, we were mostly thinking of including it in like driver's ed curriculum. So when young people are learning how to drive, they also know that they have an option for public transit.
That's insightful, thank you.
I wish I would have had that.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On so I got a couple recommendations of other groups that you might want to talk to that are closer to your goals. With the transit part of it, MVTA serves Shakopee, Savage, and then parts of Dakota County, and they currently have microtransit in the Dakota County part, but not way over on the other side in the Savage and Shakopee part. Reaching out to the MVTA board to say, we really need this and we'd like you to consider extending microtransit to our part of the world would probably be heard with welcoming ears, to let them know that you really want this opportunity. It's like Uber, but not as expensive, and they drive around in those little buses. And that would connect you to the rest of the transportation system, and you could go from anywhere in Shakopee, get on the bus that goes to the Mall of America, and have access to the whole rest of the region through that microtransit. So it's not there yet, but it's something that you could advocate for that could happen soon, because the legislature gave them money for microtransit. So looking for new places for them to do that might be a possibility for you. The other part is, last week I saw a presentation at the South St. Paul Library, which is, of course, in the Dakota County system, but they had some youth with a lot of the same issues of needing someplace to go, and they ended up getting a youth librarian that speaks Spanish, and they added an area for teens to hang out after school, and it has a Switch and a Wii and games and things that young people can do for free. And that's been a major driver of people coming to the library. So talking with the Shakopee Library about it, would they be willing to take on something like that? And that would help increase people's familiarity with the library and all of the resources there, plus give kids a place to go and get together for free. So just suggestions that you might want to consider to follow up with your work. Thanks.
And Mr. Chair, if I may.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. Actually, some of my texting with Mary was along those lines. But right now, even though the MVTA microtransit doesn't serve Shakopee, both Chaska and Shakopee are served by Southwest Prime, which comes from Southwest Transit. So I think there's an opportunity to come out and talk about transportation and transit. And we also have a program, it's called the Transit Assistance Program, which is a reduced fares program. I think there's a number of things that we can, I'll follow up with Mary afterwards and we can figure out, the best setting to do that, but also maybe get you out to both Southwest Transit and MVTA to their boards to present some of the same information.
Thank you. That's a great thought. And you have a good resource in Councilmember Barber, who represents Shakopee in the area very well. And being chair of the Transportation Committee is not without some influence into what we do.
Chair, we're being called on time.
Oh, okay. I have to say one thing as a prerogative of chair. St. Cloud has a training center for passengers, not just for employees. And I've always loved that idea, so maybe we need to think about that. Yeah. Thank you so much for your presentation. Next up. Thank you. Welcome. Introduce yourself.
All right. Thank you, Chair and Council members. It's great to be here. My name is Kate Abdi, and this is our 2050 Regional Guide on Affordable Housing and our recommendations about affordable housing and implementation of green spaces. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about our group. We are the combination of the Community Resource Center and Shakopee Diversity Alliance. Again, my name is Kate Abdi, and the other group people who helped us plan this presentation are...
My name's Samaya.
My name's Misty.
My name is Garad.
As I mentioned earlier, our group is made up of two organizations in Shakopee. On the top is the Shakopee Community Resource Center, which promotes positive change for families by engaging and linking them to resources relevant about health, education, employment, and housing resources. And on the bottom is the Shakopee Diversity Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization working in Scott County to provide a voice for underrepresented groups to educate the larger community on allyship. Today, we're going to be discussing the two key recommendations that you see on the screen about housing affordability and green spaces. In shaping a regional development guide, prioritizing affordability and embracing green space is essential. Affordability ensures that progress benefits all, encouraging inclusivity. Integrating green spaces not only preserves the environment, but also enhances the community well-being. Combining affordability and green spaces creates a vibrant, accessible, and sustainable living environments, which pave the way for a unified future. This is the process that we took to create the policy recommendations. We went through a series of workshops that involved conducting insightful interviews with diverse communities, facilitating group discussions, and analyzing council data. During these sessions, we identified key concerns about affordable housing and green spaces. Engaging in conversations provided valuable insights into the many-sided issues surrounding these topics. I'm going to have Samaya talk about recommendation number 1.
Thank you, Kaif. My name's Samaya, and I'll be covering recommendation number 1. Diverse housing types are affordable and available to all community members, regardless of diverse backgrounds. Every community member in Scott County must have access to homes that work for their households and lives. This includes youth and multi-generational families.
Their homes need to be in safe, affordable neighborhoods, and they also need to accommodate to larger families. Safe housing should be in areas that represent the buyer's ethnic makeup and promote diversity. Community members should also have resources for Sharia-compliant financial solutions as well. Sharia-compliant financial solutions provide interest-free loans for Muslims who are interested in buying homes. Next are quotes that we extracted from our interviews that emphasize our primary goal. Starting with number 1, which is access. I have a large family and I couldn't find a single home that fits my family, which forced us to live in 2 separate homes. This is significant because it highlights the challenges of finding suitable housing for a large family, which resulted in the need to live in separate homes. Quote number 2 regarding affordability says, you have to be able to afford the space that fits everyone, or buy an older home that is more affordable, knowing that you have to add on, which is also very costly. Quote number 2 shows the financial struggle of finding suitable housing for a large family by affording a spacious home or purchasing a more affordable older home with costly renovations. The last quote regarding inclusivity says, I put offers down above the asking price and they were not accepted. I believe race may have played a role in this. The last quote here demonstrates the racial barriers community members face when accessing affordable housing and how those from certain racial or ethnic backgrounds may face obstacles when trying to access these housing opportunities. I will hand the floor to Misty, who will be covering recommendation number 2.
Thank you to Samaya and Kaif. I appreciate that. I am very passionate about green spaces, so I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Let me first define green spaces because I think that that is very important because that means something different to everyone. Green spaces are parks, trails, playgrounds, and community gardens and recreational areas that are spaces that are open fields where people can relax, walk, spend time together away from busy traffic sounds and heavy traffic in the community. Green spaces in Scott County need to be in areas that are safe to access. Residents should not have to cross busy highways or construction sites to enjoy. I'm going to highlight the 2 pictures on the bottom specifically for that point once I'm done with the other points. Green spaces should be located in areas that bring diverse groups of people together to learn from and enjoy each other in the space, as we are all diverse here. Green spaces should provide a space for communities to grow food, such as a community garden. Now, I'd like to highlight the 2 pictures on the bottom because they specifically speak to the access of green spaces. The picture is Memorial Park. The map is of Highway 101. There are houses on one side. Memorial Park is down the other side. So you either have to cross Highway 101, which is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is dangerous, or go miles down the road, then cross, then walk back to the park, then walk back 2 miles, then cross, then walk back 2 miles home, which makes it not very accessible. It's beautiful, but not very accessible. Next, I'd like to read the community quotes. Thanks, Keith. Again, let's talk about access. I really like to see in the community an open area with green spaces and trees that I could use for a walk, and not just for myself, but for everyone. I'm going to speak to this point for just a second. For those of you who have been to Shakopee, there is a nice bridge they've built across 169. It's a bike trail bridge. I happen to live on one side, which is great because I can access the north to the south. However, if you live on the south side, it is miles and through an industrial area, so harder to get to. Beautiful, but again, hard to get to. Point 2 is about affordability. Families can't afford bills or taking kids to indoor playgrounds. I personally have 7 children. My husband is here as well. We do have 7 children, and it is very expensive to take them to indoor anything. And a variety of ages plays into that, but again, expense is huge. And lastly is inclusivity. Every neighborhood should have access to green spaces to promote health, wellness, and efficiency. I would like to just go over overall points for that before the next slide. Just the observations from the quotes. Green spaces not only promote physical health and wellness, but also contribute to the overall community's well-being, which is why it needs to be more accessible to all. Lastly is the importance. Green spaces provide a place for residents to relax and focus on their mental and physical well-being, which is important to us all. Recreational areas in Scott County need to be free and accessible to all. Safety and connecting communities should be the primary goal of all recreational areas. Recreational areas are how we connect to our neighbors and grow as a community. Why does this matter? Diversity and connection is what makes us stronger as a whole community. And when we can connect in outdoor spaces, not only makes us more vibrant, but well-connected as a group. Now I'm going to pass it to Garad to go over overall findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. C, and thank you, Sumaya and Keith. And thank you, Chair and the council members. I would like to conclude these recommendations and goals. As already been mentioned, enhancing culturally competent housing resource to address language and cultural barriers, improving accessibility for residents in search of housing, And in Shakopee, we don't have option for anyone who wants to actually buy Sharia compliance houses. Very, very difficult. One example is for me. I have financial and accounting background, and I can easily navigate the system, but it took me more than 20 years to buy a house. It is very, very hard. And advocating for regional policy, promoting increased affordable housing in Scott County, and also addressing barriers for families of all sizes. One example that was mentioned earlier is if family is more than 6 children, they will not be able to find easily house that can fit their needs. They have to split into 2 different apartments. So that's something that council can probably help policy towards that goals. Work with communities to ensure that green space are equally distributed, ensuring accessibility to all residents. That was an example that Misty mentioned about Memorial. I really love that place because it's actually close to the Shakopee landing. But I only went there one time. I was living in Shakopee 15 years. So it's very, very hard. Encourage enhanced green space with trails, playgrounds, and community gardens that appeal to nearby residents. One of the interviews that we had was a community member who moved from Faribault. They had a community garden where they actually go and even participate and grow things. When they moved to Shakopee, they did not have that. So that was a little bit different. And reflection in shaping a regional development guide, prioritizing affordability and embracing green spaces is essential. Affordability ensures that progress benefits all and fostering inclusivity. Integrating green space not only preserve the environment, but also enhance community well-being, provide a refuge from urban life, combining affordability and green space create a vibrant, accessible, and sustainable living environment, paving the way for a harmonious future. And I want to thank again the chair and the council member for the opportunity that you gave us today to present our recommendations, ideas that we think will benefit Shakopee and Scott County as a whole. And we now open for questions.
Thank you so much. I'll look here, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair, and to the presenters. I think this information is very helpful for us, and I'm really, that we can use in our policymaking, and I'm really glad to see that you have brought out on several occasions the importance of having communities feel connected by design and what that means to strengthening the community and the culture. So thank you very much for that.
Great, and Councilmember Lilligren, we're gonna go just down the road here.
Thanks, yeah, thank you for the work here in the presentation. It's very fascinating, and I want to lift up a couple things you said. I think, Kay Abdi, this might have been something you said in the beginning, but you talked about our unified future. Was that you? Yeah, and I just love that saying, and I think it really influences in a very positive way our policy conversations, this idea of unity and things. We're always looking to the future, but I don't know that we're always really addressing the sort of human capacity. And then in your reflections slide that you presented the idea of a harmonious future. Again, it's a future, and we're going to get there anyway, and what's the quality of our life going to be there? So I really applaud you and lift that up. I have 2 quick questions, please. And one of them had to do with the presentation that you had out in the lobby. And I saw a term in your materials that I'd never heard, I was unfamiliar with. And so I asked another member of your team to define it. So rather than me defining it, you know it better. But it was the term third spaces, that you need more third spaces. Is that something any of you are prepared to define for us, please? I thought it was brilliant, a brilliant definition. I didn't want to ask a gotcha question, so I apologize if I did. So as it was explained to me by your team member, or did you want to respond?
I was just gonna ask, what was like the context of it? Like,
So it's in the green space conversation, and another of your team members who's here, but isn't part of the presentation team, defined it for me, and that was spaces that especially young people could go where there wasn't an expectation that it would cost them something, coffee shop, you're gonna buy something, and so it was a public gathering place that didn't cost something. I love that term. I'm gonna start using it myself. Third spaces, so thank you for that. And the other one is, and several of us serve on the Community Development Committee here, and that's the division that's responsible for planning. All of our departments and divisions work on the design guidelines, regional design guidelines, but that's kind of the hub. And we had this really interesting debate and conversation about safe housing and what safety means. And it can mean so many different things in so many different contexts. And so I'm wondering if any of you are just prepared to kind of just explain to me what safe housing means to this team.
I can answer some of it.
Thank you, Ms. Dean.
The third space is one I'm wondering if it was my daughter, so I'll just talk to her.
Is that your mom?
I was like, oh.
Yes, it's your daughter.
I know
Yes, it's your daughter, she's waving.
So I'm going to give a personal example of something that happened in my neighborhood. It's now happened several times. So this is the opposite of safety. My neighborhood is very diverse. I very much support diversity. I have signage in my yard. Leave that to your own imagination that supports that and how I feel about people in the community and how I show love. I have another neighbor who has done the same. And in the last few months, we've had hate speech and a hate crime committed on both of our properties. So that would be the opposite of safety. So when I think of safety, I think of I can promote safety or display my love for my neighbor in a way that doesn't cause that to occur on my property.
Very helpful.
But I also think safety can be, a diverse group of people living together being able to count on their neighbors. Another example, I have a neighbor who has a brain tumor. I just visited her this morning. She can count on me to help with her garbage. We help her scoop snow. Those are just the ways that we can connect as a community and show her that she is safe in her community.
Thank you for sharing. And part of our issue is, we were talking about this sort of the safety, being safe in public, but then there's the safety as the housing you're living in, safe for your family. So thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councilwoman Pacheco, Barber, then Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, I was paying really attention to the compatibility or the size issue of the housing. We often talk about the financial compatibility, but as an individual, I had 3 brothers, 3 sisters, a mother and father, and we lived on the bottom half of the duplex. My grandmother lived upstairs, and so you look around, you just don't find that anymore, and it's really hard even with a yard. And so I really haven't, it wasn't in the front of my mind until you reminded me of all of that time and alike. So I really appreciate that. And I will pay more attention, inspires me to pay more attention as we look at what we're doing in the area of housing.
Let's go back to Yasin first.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you, first of all, for being here and introduce us the recommendation that you guys are looking for. I know it is when you're looking for the Sharia compliance finance housing, it's very difficult in that region area. So I would like to thank you for bringing the recommendation, because I know that most of the families come from the East Africa. They have a difficult to access that kind of Sharia compliant financial resources, which they don't have any region in this area. So your recommendation is valuable. When we take in policy making next time, maybe we consider that kind of resources available to the community. And I thank you for what you're doing.
Great. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all. I really cannot tell you how proud I am of Shakopee right now. Very, very disappointed to hear the hate speech part, but I appreciate you calling that out. That is, it's a reality that happens in communities. Shakopee is an extraordinarily diverse community. Really sorry that happened to you. I think we're better than that, and I think my fellow council members can see we're better than that by who we have assembled here today. This was the perfect time to come and present some of this because we are in the middle of all of this regional planning of looking at how we connect our communities. I actually do use the term third space. I talk about mobility hubs a lot, where those mobility hubs are not just where you can find a bike or a connection to an electric vehicle, but it can be turned into a community gathering space that has green features and garden features and things like that that you can becomes places where communities can ground themselves. And so, I mean, I see some of that reflected in kind of what we're talking about here. And I think it's a great message to bring back to the community in Shakopee. Also to kind of follow up Councilmember Lilligren's, I also did write down about how the message is unifying and how our diversity is our strength, and I could not agree with that more. And it makes me really, really proud of my community. I think that, I do want to mention Southern gentleman taking video, Ibrahim Mohammed, out there in the audience. So many, many years ago, a few of us had an idea, this Shakopee Diversity Alliance, and it was current Representative Tabke, myself, Mary, Ibrahim, and what you're seeing is years and years later of what a community can look like when they actually stick together and stand up as a unified group. So thank you.
I will be very brief, Mr. Chair. So I am thinking differently. So I also serve on the Community Development Committee. I'm on the Regional Development Work Group. And I am a former mayor, 20-some years on a city council, and I've seen multiple developments come before me. And it has me thinking now that at the Met Council level, where we're setting policy, and especially as we review grants for developments that are coming through that include housing, I think it would be an interesting concept based on what I've heard. And I've thought about this over the years. I will just tell you this, whenever we could get a 3 or 4 bedroom apartment, maybe a handful of them in a larger apartment complex, we felt pretty good about that, but it's still woefully inadequate. And I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to get into single-family homes or attached housing that they can own. So for me, I think that if we can put some meat around a policy or goals whereby when a local community is looking at their comp plan process and they're setting their guiding and zoning, that they can focus in to reflect the people who are living in the community. It's definitely changing, and yet I hope all of you run for city council and mayor one day and bring all of your perspectives forward, because I think that is still lacking across our region, although it's getting better. But I think that if a community can do some sort of a survey or work just like this, reaching out to community to really understand, if we create 100 homes, how many of them in this community need to reflect the way people actually live and what their needs are, rather than just the cookie cutter way we've been doing it for the last 30, 40, 50 years. So I think that's something that we can weave into our thought process and challenge communities to make sure you're reflective of your community and the broader community across the region. I think that is essential. You should not have to, I think, diminish the way you live to fit how other people are creating the homes that are available for you to live in. So that to me is hitting home today.
I think we're at our time. I want to thank the panel. Great answers. Thank you so much, and I'll invite our next panel of presenters.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Laura Moreno. I live in Woodbury, Minnesota.
I'm Emilio Carrillo from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I'm Destiny Mallet from Fridley, Minnesota.
And you guys must be asking, who are we? We are members of COPAL, who represent Latino in youth and adults who live throughout the metro area. COPAL stands for Community Organizing Latino Power and Action. And it's a member-based organization dedicated to creating a dignified life for Latinos in Minnesota. Today, we will walk through research process,
economic barriers for the undocumented, housing costs and discrimination, our reflections, and our recommendations. In our research process, we discussed the impacts of these issues in our lives, and we also conducted about 25 interviews. We analyzed them and took the results.
So throughout all of our research, one of the topics that we wanted to address was economic barriers for the undocumented. Some of the economic barriers are language barriers, but not only are there language barriers, there's a lack of learning opportunity. Many people are forced to prioritize work rather than getting their chance to learn English so they cannot find a better job. There's also low wages. Many people, undocumented people, they struggle with earning wages. Sorry. And there's a need for experience in jobs. There's non-transferable education from home countries, and therefore they cannot find the chance to look for a job. Expensive transportations and unreliable public transportations. Many people can only afford the job to work, but not to home. In one of our interviews we conducted, someone stated,
Me gustaría tener una empresa, pero es muy complicado para ponerle a nombre de uno. También me atrasa el idioma. Es complicado porque el lenguaje y muchas veces es difícil encontrar una escuela por la cantidad de gente que se escribe diariamente.
Now here's the English version. I would like to have a business, but it's very complicated to register under my name. Also, the language barrier is holding me back. It's difficult because of the language, and many times it's hard to find a school due to the number of people who enroll daily. Now I would like to share a story about my grandma facing language barriers at work. She works too hard in the bone in a job that demands so much from her. And let me tell you that cleaning bathrooms, it really isn't an easy job. She works so hard and puts so much effort to race against time to avoid any consequences. And it pains me to see that every time when she gets home, she tells me how tired she is and how she wants to learn English to find a better job. She sacrifices her own desires to provide for her family, and these types of barriers are precisely why we are here today.
Diving into our second issue, we discuss our expensive and discriminatory housing system. So we'd like you to think about how the Met Council can support immigrants in the region. One way to do so, by promoting the acceptance of ITINs. Quickly, ITIN stands for Individual Taxpayer and Identification Number. Some quick basics. It was created by the IRS in the 1990s for immigrants to pay taxes without a social security number. It's comparable to a social security number, but without the social security benefits. The problem, many private sector businesses like property management, banks, utility companies, etc., they ask for social security numbers without an ITIN option. And many public institutions and programs, they have operated similarly, even though ITIN holders are Minnesota taxpayers.
Mr. Chair, you might want to advance your slide. I think you're speaking from the next slide.
Yeah, is that yeah, there it is.
There we go.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some of the barriers we've discovered, housing barriers. Discrimination and access to affordable housing eliminate opportunities. Undocumented individuals face challenges getting loans to buy a home. Rent consumes the majority of their income. And high cost of housing and low wages keep families from being able to spend time together. This is a story from someone in la comunidad that was interviewed. Es un poquito complicado. Nos han mirado y dicen, no eres elegible para estas viviendas. Y pues sí es un poco difícil para encontrar las viviendas. Más que todo por las apariencias, porque a veces buscan unos lugares mejores y hay veces que nos han dicho, tu físico no nos da la imagen que puedes pagar esta renta. Pues el color de la piel y la forma en que ellos se visten.
Now in English. It's a bit difficult to find housing sometimes, mainly because of the appearances. Sometimes you look for better places, and there are times when they have said, your appearance doesn't give us the image that you can afford this rent. Another person in our investigation also said, yo no he tenido ese problema de pagar la renta, porque siempre he tenido 2 trabajos. Lo que sí he sufrido mucho es que he dejado a mi hija todo el tiempo sola con una niñera que no la ha cuidado bien. Eso es lo más difícil, porque me perdí todos los años bonitos de estar con ella. Y realmente eso es lo más difícil.
In English. I have not had that problem of paying rent because I've always had 2 jobs. What I have suffered a lot is that I've left my daughter alone all the time with the babysitter, and I'm not able to take care of her well. This is the hardest part because I've lost all of the beautiful years of being with her. Although she manages with 2 jobs, the toll it takes on her missing her precious moments with her daughter is undeniable. Our recommendations. Review ways the council can incentivize public programs to accept either a social security number or an ITIN as a clear option. Support any legislative or municipal initiatives that increase or equalize access for ITIN holders. Public initiatives could be things like affordable housing and state social programs. Met Council, we're suggesting that you research how Met Council programs could open opportunities for immigrants. Other forms of support, make public transportation far more reaching and affordable, support opportunities for better education and English classes, organize regional conversations around supporting immigrant workers, plan to have more access to affordable housing in the metro area, and have affordable housing available near job-dense areas. What we've learned from our research, discussion can truly help awareness. Exploring how discrimination impacts where people can live in Minnesota helps us understand unequal opportunities faced by different racial groups. And understanding challenges facing immigrants takes extra efforts because their lives are often hidden from public view.
Thank you all for your time. We will now be open for any questions.
Thank you. Great presentation. I was looking right, but there's people on the left, so. Diego Morales.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for the presentation. This hits home for me. I am a first-generation person here from my family, so all my family's immigrants, gone through all the struggles. I remember living 2 families in a 2-bedroom apartment complex for my whole life. But there is organizations out there that do help. I did give my business card personally to some of your staff. Reach out. I can help you with certain aspects of it, personally in my day-to-day, but thank you for everything that you are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lilligan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the work here, and I really appreciate your parents, Destiny, you sharing your personal, your family story as well, so thanks for that. And I do have a question just about your team, and you seem to be the team that is from the most far-flung parts of the region. Most of the groups come from one community, and so I'm just wondering how you found your way to the work of COPAL and to this work from the different parts of the metro that you come from.
Well, Emilio, again, appreciate the question. So I mentioned that I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, because that's where I initially grew up, like as a kid. I now live in the New Brighton area, but I actually was introduced to COPAL at a volunteer event over the summer. I met some representatives of COPAL. They told me that they were for the people, for the community, and that they cared. And I told them that we had the same vision and that I felt that we met for a reason. That was in August, and here we are today.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Again, I just appreciate you having the vulnerability to tell your stories, everybody here today. You know, I have much privilege in my life. I will say that my mother was divorced and raised me, and that was at a time when women couldn't get financing to purchase homes. They had to have permission from their husband or a significant male figure in their life. And we rented out rooms in our home to make ends meet. And yet I had a lot of love, but my mother worked 2 or 3 jobs and odd jobs along the way. So I think I got my work ethic from her, for sure. But I never take that for granted, and I think that I forget that there are people all around me that are still going through that today. So it's really good to hear your story because it's very impactful to me, and it brings me back to my younger years too, where I was at home and my mother was working late in a restaurant, and I was at an age where I'm sure she felt I was safe, but I can at least to a degree relate to what you're talking about, and I know how hard she struggled, and I hope that as a whole society we can get past this, but it's going to take a long time. But with you here today, it keeps us mindful of the work we need to do, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Thanks again for the presentation and for sharing as you have. I really found the comment that a lot of times we really find it difficult to help because the lives of many immigrants are lived in the shadows. And it's really important that we recognize our responsibility to reach out. I am wondering if COPAL has an objective of finding those places where support such as you are describing actually exist and helping not only to connect those who need the help that we're talking about, but also to hold up the examples of that good work that is happening for other communities to be able to emulate. I wonder if that's something that COPAL is doing. Are you looking for those examples and holding those examples up? Can we count on you in some ways to be able to connect communities for what should be happening? You're certainly coming forward and talking with us, and we're Metropolitan in essence, so can share your words. But is there a function that you have to do the same, such as you're coming forward here, as you come forward to other localities in the metro area or beyond? I don't know. But I sure think we'll help you to do that, as we have learned so much from you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. For any other Councilmember Pacheco?
I want to thank you as well. And Diego's a first generation. I'm third generation, family from Mexico. And so they got here about early 1920s. So it's different. I've watched over generations, and I'm always pleased to hear young people speak, and especially in the numbers. It reminds me that our future is bright. And so when you listen to it and watch it, now my daughter, who's also 16 and the other one's 12, she's going to hate that when I come home and tell her what she's got to do now these days. Every time I bring her somewhere, she's looks up here. But again, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right, Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to speak earlier too, but I actually want to speak to everyone. And I want to say thank you for putting your drop in the bucket, for speaking out for people that can't speak for themselves. I come from a family, we were very poor. We had to live in a certain part of the city. My father worked 2-3 jobs for years and years, and I know about not having to spend time with your family. And so, but what you're doing today is you're laying a foundation for change, and it's not a sudden change. It's one brick at a time. So efforts like this, these are the bricks that are forged that build a better future for us. So I'm thanking all the groups for being here today to try to create these bricks.
Thank you.
Emma, I'm looking, I think we have time, but do you have any other conclusion or presentations?
We do have one more presentation.
All right, well then, I want to thank this panel. You clearly have touched many of us here, and great stories. And your input, I'm thinking many people have said that, your input is meaningful as we think about our policies.
Hi, council members. My name is Jillian Greenberg. I'm an associate planner in the local planning assistance team, and I've also had the honor and privilege of working with all of these community leaders over the past few months to develop this engagement and the presentations you've seen today. I'm going to be rounding us out this evening by summarizing the key themes that we've heard and connecting them to the draft land use objectives. As a reminder, there are 8 draft land use objectives. Hopefully, they are starting to look a little familiar. And while all 8 have come up in some form over the past workshops that we've held with these community organizations, there are 4 objectives, the ones in darker blue, that I'm going to highlight today. We're going to focus on objectives 2, 4, 5, and 8. And we're going to start by diving in at the end with objective 8, because it's a topic that we've talked about less so far this policy cycle. Objective 8 is about supporting the economic well-being of the region. Participants tonight have highlighted the importance of an inclusive and thriving economy for their overall well-being. Across community groups, concerns about low wages and high costs of housing have emerged. These projects highlighted how residents without financial security have to prioritize working multiple jobs rather than exploring career paths and furthering their education that would allow them to explore their career goals and maximize their economic contributions to the region. Affordability challenges are especially acute for new immigrants. A key priority that emerged through this engagement is increasing work opportunities for new immigrants in the region. Discrimination, work permits, and an inability to transfer credentials from their home country hinders new immigrants from finding secure and well-paid jobs. Participants emphasize that it is important to recognize that undocumented residents live within our region, utilize council systems, and are part of our communities. When it comes to regional values, council policies should encourage communities to value the contributions of all immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, by promoting the well-being of all residents. Additionally, there's a strong interest to push the council to work with communities to offer tailored training to prepare immigrants for the employment opportunities in the region and to navigate the job market. Finally, interview findings highlighted a pattern around how many new and undocumented immigrants find education and economic opportunities. They use their social connections and their networks. This emphasizes the importance of uplifting cultural community connections within our region. Creating more spaces within our region to foster these connections will support a thriving economy for all residents. I'm now going to turn to Objective 5, which focuses on housing that aligns with community needs. As you heard, diverse types of affordable housing is another area of key concern across the communities that have presented tonight. This not only includes multifamily dwellings, but also a range of single-family homes, townhomes, and condominiums that can serve large families and multi-generational households. Offering a mix of housing types ensures that individuals and families can choose residences that align with their lifestyle, their family size, and their personal preferences. Participants emphasize the importance of placing affordable housing in proximity to public transportation, job centers, and essential services, which enhances the overall livability and convenience for residents. Finally, as you heard today, participants also expressed the need for culturally responsive resources that make renting or buying a home more accessible for all community members. Turning to Objective 4, which focuses on protecting and restoring natural systems, we've heard tonight that participants place a significant value on the role of green space in enhancing their quality of life. They understand that the integration of green space and natural systems is fundamental to creating sustainable and climate-resilient cities. They also see green spaces as sites for building a sense of community and supporting their health. Green spaces are often appreciated for their ability to support residents' physical and mental health. Through this project, we also heard about how parks and community gardens, playgrounds, and trails represent sites of connection for community members. They serve as places for meeting up with friends and family, and they also facilitate unplanned connections with neighbors that make a community feel welcoming and inclusive. Participants want to see green spaces available in all types of communities, easily accessible to residents of all abilities, and accessible from many modes of transportation. We'll round out tonight talking about Objective 2, which focuses on connected multimodal transportation. We've heard tonight participants express desires for a multimodal transportation system that connects them to community spaces and important destinations like job centers and universities. We've heard this theme across different types of communities. Urban residents express desires to access jobs in more suburban areas where jobs might have higher pay. And in suburban communities, residents express the need for a transportation system that supports access to community sites nearby, as well as destinations like universities and colleges without a private vehicle. Participants also highlighted the importance of safety for all modes of transportation. This includes safety of biking and walking along roads, especially in suburban communities, as well as the safety of public transportation. So as you all know, policy writing is underway, and we're incorporating the recommendations and expertise from the community leader collaboration. All organizations from last year's Young Leaders Collaboration, as well as the Community Leaders Collaboration, were invited to participate in a Community Leader Technical Advisory Group. That group is meeting 4 times over the next 2 months, and they'll be reviewing all of the land use policies to make sure that they reflect community feedback. This community expertise is also being integrated into projects that are being given to the local Community Technical Advisory Group, which is another group that's meeting over these next 2 months and reviewing land use policies. In the framing of these policies, they hear about the results from the community engagement and how it's been integrated into the policies and actions. Internally, we are also working on incorporating this information into policy writing. While staff across the council have been exposed to this information more informally over the past few months, we will also be developing formal memos to capture these findings for each policy area. So with that, we hope the presentations tonight have provided more details and stories about how the Metropolitan Council policy affects communities in our region and the potential of the 2050 plan to positively impact many aspects of residents' lives. Ultimately, we want to thank the community leaders from across these 3 organizations. They've put in work across the past 5 months to learn about what the Met Council does, to research interests in their communities, and then develop the recommendations that you've heard here. It's been a lot of work, and we want to close with a thank you for their efforts. We also want to thank you all for attending this expo and asking insightful questions. And we invite friends and family of the participants to join us in room 1A for a recognition ceremony after we close here. Thanks, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Jillian, and thank you all participants who have given us so much, and we look forward to visiting with you personally, but appreciate your time, your persistence, and your creativity and thinking. So this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you at your recognition ceremony.